Good morning, Lee. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, we have some questions for you. First of all, can you introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us a little bit about what you're going through?
So my name is Lee Hammock. I'm a diagnosed narcissist. I have narcissistic personality disorder. I have built a social media platform somehow of talking about my experience with dealing with narcissistic personality disorder on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook and whatnot. I go by the handle mental illness, and I, help people get a deeper understanding of the inner workings of a person that's diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And I try to help other people like myself get into therapy and help people that are dealing with people like myself, understand that you might not be crazy. Like you are, you're you. My wife had left me, so I've always considered myself a good person. I know everybody narcissists are all horrible, evil people, but I always felt like I was a good person. I've always been helpful overall. So I always been like, I always like kind of get a high from helping people, a dopamine hit, dopamine rush from helping people overall in general. So I've always been doing that my entire life by trying to, motivate people on social media through my own personal like Facebook and stuff like that. Just, hey, get up, go to the gym. I've lost 100 pounds. I've done this, I've done that. So I've always been kind of motivational in that aspect, but I've always felt like I was lacking something, like the human connection pretty much. So me and my wife had got into an argument years ago. Well, it's been about 5.5 years ago. Well, she just pretty much screamed at me that I was a narcissist. And of course, I called her one back. She left, and I'm super inquisitive. I was like, why did she call me a narcissist? Like, why? 'Cause I thought narcissist. This is 2017, so I thought narcissist was just conceited people, cocky people. I I. I'm sorry. When she called me a narcissist, I can't help how I look. I was insulting her back. But looking up the traits and the symptoms and stuff like that, and it just for me, I've always felt different my entire life. So those traits and symptoms kind of gave me the answer as to why I felt different my entire life, why I felt out of place in big crowds, and why I felt like I lacked empathy and all this other good stuff. So it gave me the answers as to why I did the stuff that I do. So that led to me going to therapy, and that 5 years down, well, 3 years later, my wife had left me, and then we got back together, and then I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of like suffering in silence. So I just got on TikTok one day and just like, hey, my name is Lee Hammock. I'm on my way to therapy right now, and I have a personality disorder. There's nothing wrong with that. You can live and be better, and then it just kind of went from there. Because
But what course of action does a therapist take when someone is an admitted sufferer of NPD? What kind of stuff do you delve into? Do you look and see if there was an inciting event in your childhood that caused PTSD that developed this, or is it genetic in your opinion? And what course of treatment is allowing you to come out, speak about it, recognize it, and heal?
So I've always felt like, like I said before, I've always kind of felt like I was different anyway, you know, and like just so I go to psychotherapy. So it really is just talk therapy. I'm a talker. You talk to me now, I'm just talking. I chat. So it helps me. I feel like that's the best form of therapy for me because we just go in there and talk. So, but the talking requires a level of honesty and vulnerability that most narcissistic people, or just a lot of people in general, aren't willing to delve into because it hurt. I mean, it hurts going back. It does. It sucks understanding the dynamic or whatever. But I feel like we just talk, like we really just talk because she thinks she's like you're smart enough to know who you are, what you're doing. So like your level of intellect helps your self awareness because if you were stupid, you wouldn't be you wouldn't be able to do it. If you didn't have any, if you wouldn't.
I have or had a really hard time holding on to my compassion for them because of the treatment I received.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so curious because I want to maintain my compassion and not be a victim, but be a participant in a toxic relationship, if that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that both of these men did in our relationship was, and this was in a CNN article recently, so I'm paraphrasing. These aren't my words. It was basically psychological abuse to the point where I doubted my own reality. And I know they call that gaslighting. They call it a lot of things. My question for you is, have you participated in that behavior, first of all, or else you won't be able to answer the question. But my question is, When a narcissist is doing that, are they aware that they're doing that, or do they believe, like, is it a psychotic thing? Not like you're psychotic, but is it a psychological thing where you believe that what you're saying is true? I'm trying to
So,
figure this out.
so sometimes, yeah. I mean, sometimes you believe it, you know what I mean? Because that's my version of the truth. You know what I mean? I see the world how I see it, and you see the world how you see it. So my goal in this transaction, in this situation, this argument, or whatever we're having, is to get you to see the world the way that I see it. You know, and it might not be the truth. It's my truth, but it's not the truth. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes they believe their own. Sometimes they do believe their own lies and stuff like that, especially if they've been telling themselves that lie for an extended period of time. So is the gaslighting intentional? Sometimes, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it is intentional. Sometimes the more like psychotic ones go into it with the plan on manipulating you today or just confusing you. That's why they hide your keys and help you look for them or hide
Right.
and stuff like that. That's intentional, you know. But sometimes it's unintentional as a defense mechanism coming from like you caught me doing something I shouldn't be doing, and I don't want to admit to it. So I'm going to make you question your reality. You know what I mean? So that's how they dig deep. So it can be. There's moments that it is intentional, but there's also moments where it just comes from just defense. You know,
Connection now with people. Do you think you can develop empathy? Is it a learned behavior, or is it something you have to sort of think, okay, appropriate behavior or feeling in this situation would be, and then act accordingly? Do you feel
uh,
like you're developing empathy?
I feel like the latter. I don't feel like I'm developing more empathy. I just feel like I understand people more. You know, I feel I've always had a certain a certain amount of empathy. I care about people, this in general, but I can turn it off because everybody doesn't deserve empathy. That's how my mind works. I feel like that just it's too much. I can't. I don't have enough to go around for everybody. I just like you get something, you get something. Like, it's kind of like duck, duck, goose. No, no, you, yes, no. It's just you go around passing around and stuff like that. But I do understand the human experience more. You know what I mean? I do understand the human dynamic and the experience more. So I understand why you were going, why you're crying right now. It's like, okay, I can see why you're crying right now. I understand that. I know how I should react right there. I'll hug you, but I might not feel nothing in that moment. You know,
Right.
I'll console you, but I'm not just like, let's cry together. I'm just who I am right now because I don't want to cry with people. I just like this is too much. It's just like I get the tears. I understand the tears and the dynamic, but it's just like I don't want to cry together. I just like just get you shed some tears. I'll console you. But it's just like because when somebody's crying around me, the first thing I think is like, why are you crying? I don't want to cry with them. I was like, now, you know, okay, So but I get it. I understand the dynamic though, so I'm a little bit more compassionate in those moments in time where I used to just be cold. You know what I mean?
If you developed empathy overnight and you still had narcissistic personality disorder, how would that hit?
So this is how my mind works right now anyway, because this is I actually had this conversation with my therapist. Because sometimes I feel like I'm not 100% narcissist all the time. And she agreed. She's like, yeah, you don't walk around being a narcissist 100% of the time. She's like, you have, she's like, you have a certain level of empathy. Like you just restrict your like the narcissistic part of you just restricts yourself from feeling it because that's too much. Like it's kind of you go into overkill. So if I woke up one day and had all the empathy, I'd probably go crazy. Because I know how my mind works now and all the stuff I've done in my life that might not be the best type of stuff. I would just focus on that. You know what I mean? I would just hyper focus on trying to get forgiveness from people who I haven't spoken to in probably 20 years. It would just be overwhelming. I know I told y'all earlier. I'm good with I'm good with the level I have now. It's enough.
Can I ask your kids? Are you super aware of how you are in front of them? Do you talk with your therapist about that, or are you guys not worried about that?
So I worried about it. A lot of people ask me what my biggest regret in life is. I tell people because I've been in therapy for 5.5 years. Um, but I have a 14-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. Um, if you do the math on a 1.5-year-old, she was when my wife came back. So
Right, right.
timetable. But she's a little devil too. So she's like, she is vengeance. But But my biggest regret is like my older son, he got a different version than my younger two do. You know, so for his first 7.5, 8 years of life, he got just a toxic, narcissistic, selfish dad. You know what I mean? And he had a lot of behavioral issues in school for until he got to high school. He's in high school now, but we got him in a therapy. He goes to the same therapist office that I actually go to. We got him in therapy. He did a couple of sessions of therapy, and we were worried about him going to high school and getting in trouble. So far, no trouble. He's doing good. It was just like goodness, because he's been in therapy and I've been working on myself. So it's like you can see the direct reflection. I mean, me and his relationship has gotten better. We joke around a lot. He talks. He's more expressive with me and stuff like that. So that helps because I can see how getting raised in a household with a narcissistic father or mother or whatever could damage you as a child if there's no course correction. You can become you might become toxic yourself possibly. You might not grow up to be a narcissist, but you can develop a lot of toxic defensive traits because you grew up in this household. So that can definitely happen. That's a genetic predisposition for some type of mental health stuff because I never knew my paternal grandfather. I never knew him because I don't talk to my dad like that. So I don't, I knew my grandma. Me and my grandma were like super close. But my paternal grandfather, I didn't know what happened to him. And I told my therapist, I was like, that bugs me. So I was laying on the couch one night. I got on Ancestry.com and I just started putting in my family members' names or whatever. I put in my dad's name, my grandma's name, and his name popped up. I was like, oh, at least I know his name, So what happened to him? So I go on there. The only thing they have on there is his death certificate. So I pulled his death certificate up and I was like, oh, cool. I know when he died. I'm like, oh, he was 28 years old. Cool. He had 3 kids. Cool. Cause of death, suicide. So he shot himself. He went in the bathroom on a Monday morning, 5:30, and instead of going to work, he shot himself. And I'm pretty sure from the report, it's like my dad found him. So imagine being 8 or 9 years old, being traumatized like that in the 70s. And they probably come get you. They probably come get the body, file a report, and then by Wednesday, you back in school. There's no therapy for little boys. So yeah, he probably developed some toxic, he had trauma, So he carried that trauma into his adulthood, and he was a bad father because of it. But so does that absolve him of what he did at the fatherhood? No, it doesn't. But I understand it more. This helped me on the forgiveness track on my own therapy journey.
Living in a household that there is clearly something wrong, and they might not even know what it is. What's available to them? Do they have help in schools? I'm out of the loop. My youngest is 20.
So typically I would tell them to seek help from a guidance counselor who might can direct them towards some better resources and things like that in school. Because our guidance counselor is going to be psychotherapists, or, clinical level psychotherapists to help those kids out. But also typically I try to do videos every once in a while on my YouTube channel directed towards children of narcissists because to help them understand that like it's not your fault. It's not you. It really not. Your toxic parent loves you in the only way that they know how to love you, which is probably not going to be enough for you to be sustainable in your adulthood or in your childhood or your youth. Because I have, like I said, one of my friends is like highly narcissistic. I had this talk with his daughter. His daughter is 12 years old. I told her to her face, like, your dad loves you. He just has some stuff that happened in his childhood that he hasn't dealt with by himself. So he takes his anger, his childhood anger, he takes it out on y'all. And I told her that to her face. You know what I mean?
In that period, see what's happening and get help.
So I've talked to probably hundreds of women who told me your exact story or a variation of it, where they were like super victims of like just crazy abuse. Like this is one of the worst stories I heard. She shares her story publicly now. Her name is Amanda. She was like literally getting physically assaulted, hands around her throat. Thought she started praying to God because she thought she was about to die, And then somehow he stopped beating her, and she's like, you know what, Lee? When he got up off of me, you know what I did? I was like, you got up and ran out the house? She was like, nope. I went over and sat in his lap and hugged him and kissed him and thanked him for not taking my life. I was like, what? But then somebody else called the police, and then she ended up fighting the police. She was fighting the police for him, Then in the hospital, I saw the body cam footage. It's horrible. In the hospital, she was asking how much his bail was. She was talking about bailing him out. She's like, can you let him know I'm asking about him and how much I'm bailing him out? It was crazy. But I understand she's a battered woman, literally. But this is a year and a half ago. She's married to somebody else now. She's living a good life. So it's possible. There's understand the dynamic that there's love after this. There's possibility of happiness after this. because you've been conditioned to believe that this person is the only one that loves you, that can give you the love that you want. You don't want to hurt him by telling on him and things like that. You don't want to ruin his life, but he's not. You're not ruining his life. You're just telling him the truth. You know, you're telling him the truth of the circumstances and things like that. I don't want to get him in trouble. He getting himself in trouble. How are you getting him in trouble? You just telling the truth. You know, it's not your guilt. They take the guilt of their life and their circumstance and they lay it on you. They lay it on you. They convince you that it's also your guilt. Like you're responsible for them in their life and things like that, keeping them healthy and keeping them out of jail, keeping their reputation whole. And that ends up hurting you more in the end because sometimes if they leave you after they done put their hands on you, something like that, you didn't tell on them, you feel bad. You're like, oh, I feel like they got away with it. How would you feel? Like, how would you feel then? You know. So I told that woman that she was in the car crying and she ended up had to go to court and testify and she put him in jail. So it's just like she survived that dynamic. She survived that situation.
What does love feel like to you?
So I think love feels like like regular love, honestly. Um, there's a famous speaker named Simon Sinek. The way he described love was how I think about love. He said love is a chemical reaction that goes on in your mind that makes you feel differently for one person than another. And he proved this in the audience. He asked some woman, she's like, y'all you married? And she's like, yeah, we're married. How long? It's like 10, 15 years, whatever. He's like, why do you love your husband? She's like, well, he's funny and he's cute and he's kind and he's smart. He's like, okay, stop. He's like, do you love me? I'm all of those things you just described. She's like, no, I don't. He's like, no, I don't love you. You see, like you see. It's a chemical reaction that sets it off for this one person in particular that makes you feel different. So that's how I feel about it. It's such a technical explanation for it, but when he said it, I was like, that's I understand it. Like, yeah, it's a chemical reaction,
which probably can like similarly, a chemical reaction could probably make you really dislike someone and you don't know why. It's like just this
and want to serve themselves first. They won't want to serve themselves first, and if you get hurt, you kind of become collateral damage. You know what I mean? If you're in a narcissist's life, you have to be serving some type of purpose. They have to be getting something from you. Once that runs out, they might discard you emotionally.
You might be a liability. You could dispose them even.
Yep. So they'll get rid of you. They'll discard you. But I tell people, so there's two different discards: the emotional discard and then like the physical discard. Just because they emotionally get rid of you doesn't mean that they'll physically separate from you. They'll stay with you and not care about you. Y'all become roommates. Y'all live in the same house and don't even talk, for years. That type of stuff right there. But sometimes they will physically discard you and get rid of you as well. But that doesn't mean that they're done with you. This because sometimes they'll try to come back into your life. They'll try to.
A lot of men have these feelings, and they don't have to be NPD, but this is where that sort of fuzziness comes between diagnosing someone with a personality disorder and just what some people may call toxic masculinity or being tough. It seems to me that guys really do have it harder, and that might even inflate some of those issues by not feeling comfortable or safe.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, I would ask people, like, who is it not making you feel comfortable or safe with those emotions? It's not typically, I'm just saying, it's not women that make you feel uncomfortable and safe. Not the right woman that you're with. It's other men who judge you based on your mental health stuff and what you have going on. Your emotional intelligence, your openness and this honesty. It's typically men that are going to come against you. Like, it just, in my own personal, like I said, I can go scroll through my comment section, panderer, weirdo, weak, beta. I get all that weird stuff, just not from not just about the narcissist stuff I talk about, but just like mental health in general. Like, weirdo, this is just need to grow some balls. Your wife is. I'm like, what are you talking about? I just like it's weird, but to go to get help at. I was just like, well, so what do I do? My wife called me a narcissist. I was like, well, so what do I do? I have no idea what should I do. So what I did was, I got on Facebook and typed in, narcissistic personality disorder, and then it led me to some self-aware narcissist Facebook groups, or like cluster B personality disorder Facebook groups, where people that were in there kind of helping each other get through everyday life. Hey, this is what's going on in my house. My wife said this. What do I do? I was like, dang, I could have wrote that, and it made me feel like I was not by myself.
Right.
It was just like not that singular feeling of aloneness that I felt. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me join this, and then from that point forward, of course, there's only so far there's strangers on the internet that can help you.
Right.
So
right.
that point forward, I was like, what's the next step? And the next step was finding a therapist. So that's when I got on psychologytoday.com and whatnot. Not like me, you know what I mean? So it's how you perceive it makes it different, you know. So how you perceive what you go through is you perceive trauma. Sometimes what you perceive as trauma is just like, no, that's my everyday life, you know. So it's just like, oh, that's not different to me. So like you said, divorce. A lot of people handle divorce differently, where they lash out at the parent that they blame for the divorce. Like, my mom caused the divorce. So a little boy grows up and starts hating women, you know. So and starts treating women horribly because he thinks his mom caused the divorce because maybe the dad told him that she cheated or she wasn't working hard enough or something like that. Your mom cheated on me, right? That's why we're not together. That's why we're not a family,
right?
And the little boy's like, oh no, mom hurt dad, and just plants that little seed, and it starts watering it every time that they get around each other. So that happens quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Parents can be awful, but they can also be great. So
yeah.
You know.
And I tell people you can't control like who you were raised by.
No.
Like your childhood is not your responsibility, but like your adulthood is.
Exactly. It's your responsibility to get the help or whatever you need to do to make yourself a functioning adult.
Yes.
Do you find your friendships are more with women or more with men?
I feel like I have probably equal setting with both, honestly. Just feel like, because I just like one of my best friends is a woman. I just feel like she's been around me for how long me and her have been friends. I just saw her a couple days ago. 2006. We've been friends like 17, 18 years. Wow. And she's friends with my wife too, so we're all cool. I just feel like I have more guy friends, I would say, but I'm super friendly with women as well. Sometimes you have to be selfish, a little bit of selfishness before you can experience like selfless. You have to love yourself before you can give to others. Like you can't pour from an empty cup. It's impossible. You can give people air, but no, but that's about it.
Yeah. Going back to kids and somehow contributing to shaping a healthier grown-up population by helping kids adjust and giving them better coping skills and life skills and trauma management skills. And it seems to me like it could be incorporated in schools at a pretty young age to start practicing self-love. Yeah,
but you see that you get the some parents out there with picket signs. It's just like, don't teach that in school. Well, I don't want this in school. Not in this classroom. I think kids should teach them how to cook and weld or something like that. We need electricians, not people who love themselves. Just like something like that.
Because we've talked about nature nurture before. Do you worry about your kids growing up with narcissistic personality traits?
Yeah, I worry about that sometimes, but I just feel like there's kind of something that, like, I got my oldest son, he does therapy now and whatnot, just to combat the stuff, because he had a lot of behavioral issues before he hit high school. We just know we thought high school was gonna be a very horrible experience to have for him, because he used to get in trouble all the time, and like just every 3-4 weeks, like we doing good grades, and all of a sudden, oh, Trey, you did something at school. Like, oh my god, it gets to be super frustrating. But like, I actually talked to him about my stuff, my childhood and stuff growing up, my mental health stuff. He follows my platforms. He's about to be 15 in a couple months. Wow. We also got him to see. He sees a therapist that's in the same office as my therapist. And the behaviors have reeled in a lot since I've been talking to him and letting him express himself more and being open and honest with him and talking about stuff. Like the behaviors is really curtailed a lot because of that. We just be talking to him like, dad to son, and just like, look, this is what's going on. I'm messed up. I did some crazy. No, this is how I was raised. I'm a grown man. I know my truth, and I just feel like when they talk to me in a negative way, it says more about themselves. This struggles that I make them question themselves. I make them question themselves. They see me talking and being honest. Like, I've been terrible to women sometimes because I have a personality that's what I'm working on. I'm in therapy for. They question themselves and it's just like, no, that's not it. I've done the same thing to women. It's because my wife doesn't listen to me. Like, are you yelling at her? Yeah, because she don't listen when I'm talking low. Oh. Okay.
This is something that you're going to be working on for the rest of your life. I know that they say that whoever they are, right? Yeah. But I know it has been said that you can't cure these disorders. it has also been said you can rewire the brain. So there's conflicting thoughts on that. But do you, from your perspective, do you feel like this is something like you had pneumonia, now you don't, or you had pneumonia, you're always going to have it, now you manage it?
I feel like this is, you manage the symptoms more than anything. Because I follow Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about a lot about rewiring the human brain and things like that. So I believe that I believe that that is a possibility that exists. But I also, mindset wise, I also think that I can, do what I need to do on myself, because I'll be in therapy for the rest of my life. I don't want to think I'm rewired enough to be okay just to be out here in the world without going to therapy and whatnot.
Right.
I feel
You have
like
to be vigilant.
I feel like I always need to go to therapy.
The United States spends more per person on healthcare than other high-income countries, but still has a lower life expectancy.
We have poor outcomes relative to other countries. We pay twice as much as any other country. We pay more and get less.
My platform is built on me talking about being in therapy and dealing with narcissistic personality disorder. I don't trust people with my information because I know I use other people's information against them.
Name brand Adderall is still available for $290 with insurance. It's the generic stuff that most people can afford that's running low. You have a productivity crisis with the slowdown in Adderall and whatnot. You have a literal healthcare crisis if people can't get blood pressure medication, diabetic medication.
These institutions' board of directors gets to choose who gets a liver, who deserves one, and why.
That's a common question to ask all transplant patients. Are you fundraising?
Are you saying environmental influences rewire the brain?
Whatever we do consistently will wire up the brain. Neurons that fire together wire together.
It's usually the folks that have the highest IQ who are most susceptible to developing serious mental illness. When somebody has a psychotic break, it's like a heart attack. It's like a brain attack. It takes a long time to recover from that.
They all took an oath that said, first, do no harm. I'm really fucking angry.
The policies and regulations in place by our governments place people in a position where either they're priced out, they're not allowed to do something with medical doctors, or something that they want to do is banned. So what it does is it forces people to start doing things on their own and learning things on their own. Anybody can learn to be a medical doctor.
We're taught not to see ourselves as part of a collective with a lot more power than the small group that created the system.
The United States spends more per person on healthcare than other high-income countries, but still has a lower life expectancy.
We have poor outcomes relative to other countries. We pay twice as much as any other country. We pay more and get less.
My platform is built on me talking about being in therapy and dealing with narcissistic personality disorder. I don't trust people with my information because I know I use other people's information against them.
Name brand Adderall is still available for $290 with insurance. It's the generic stuff that most people can afford that's running low. You have a productivity crisis with the slowdown in Adderall and whatnot. You have a literal healthcare crisis if people can't get blood pressure medication, diabetic medication.
These institutions' board of directors gets to choose who gets a liver, who deserves one, and why.
That's a common question to ask all transplant patients. Are you fundraising?
Are you saying environmental influences rewire the brain?
Whatever we do consistently will wire up the brain. Neurons that fire together wire together.
It's usually the folks that have the highest IQ who are most susceptible to developing serious mental illness. When somebody has a psychotic break, it's like a heart attack. It's like a brain attack. It takes a long time to recover from that.
They all took an oath that said, first, do no harm. I'm really fucking angry.
the policies and regulations in place by our governments place people in a position where either they're priced out, they're not allowed to do something with medical doctors, or something that they want to do is banned. So what it does is it forces people to start doing things on their own and learning things on their own. Anybody can learn to be a medical doctor.
We're taught not to see ourselves as part of a collective with a lot more power than the small group that created the system.